You are listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern vitality. If you are seeking to reconnect with your innate vibrancy, you're in the right place. I'm Emily Davis, a seasoned holistic esthetician and herbalist. Join me as we unlock the secrets of ancient skincare practices, explore the beauty of seasonal and nature-based living, herbalism, and true holistic well-being for you and the broader ecosystem. This podcast is brought to you by Stratum Aesthetics. Head to stratumaesthetics.com to find curated skincare, body care, and other wellness products hand-selected by me. Now enjoy the show. Please remember that the information I share in this podcast is based on my personal and professional experience and is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not individualized skincare advice, nor is it medical advice. I encourage you to take charge of your own health decisions and listen to your body, seeking out the resources and professionals that best support your wellness journey. Welcome in. Today, I'm sharing one of my most requested topics, which is retinol, Retin-A, all of the retinoids, and I'm excited to talk about this. When I was putting this episode together, I was like, okay, I want to talk about like the conventional view on retinoids. I want to talk about the alternatives. I want to talk about how vitamin A, which all of these retinoids we'll talk about today, that's just an umbrella term for vitamin A for the skin. And so with that, I want to talk about vitamin A internally. And I was like, dang, that's a lot of stuff to cover. So I decided let's do 3 episodes. Let's not make it overwhelming. Today we'll be talking about the retinoids. Next week, I'll be talking about alternatives and if that is as it seems to be, if that's actually a thing. And then I'll be talking about internal vitamin A and how that affects our skin in 2 weeks from now. Of course, I will be approaching this from a holistic herbalist, corneotherapeutic lens. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Emily. I'm grateful you're tuning in. If you're back again, hello. I'm sending big hugs your way. Make sure you're subscribed to the show so you don't miss episodes. I would love, if you are enjoying this show, I would love if you send it to a like-minded BFF. I think that if you like it, they will like it too. I'm a big fan of word of mouth. That's actually how I built and grew my aesthetics practice. And I want to see this side of the business grow in that way too. I just think it's a cool way to build community. All right, so on to the show. Today we're talking about all the types of vitamin A and how they interact with receptors in our skin. This is going to give you an idea of the difference between things like retinol that you might see in skincare that you get at a spa or even at the drugstore. I'll be talking about Retin-A, which you would get as a prescription. I'll be talking about retinaldehyde, all of the benefits, the side effects, and of course, I'm going to talk about how this is looked at from a corneotherapeutic point of view. My intention here is that you just walk away with a really well-rounded point of view without any dogma about if this is right for your skin or not. So vitamin A is really all about skin cells and how they're growing, maturing. It is going to help with a process called differentiation, which is basically just how a baby skin cell becomes a mature adult skin cell. It's kind of like the training program for a cell. Vitamin A is also going to regulate our skin cell turnover. And that means how often old cells shed and then new ones move up to the surface. So that's like the biggest thing with vitamin A. It's going to speed up this skin cell turnover process. So a little baby skin cell is at the bottom. It's a big, plump, juicy grape. And as it grows and as it migrates up to the surface layers of our skin, it's going to start to flatten and dry out and then eventually fall off. So that skin cell process that vitamin A is regulating and these synthetic retinoids are speeding up is that whole process. And as we age, that process slows down. And so the theory is that if we're artificially creating more skin cell turnover, we're going to reduce skin aging. It also is going to play a huge role in collagen production as well. And so when people are talking about retinol just being like so amazing, this is usually what they're talking about, is its ability to influence this process. Retinoids are just the umbrella term for all vitamin A derivatives that can bind to retinoic acid receptors in our skin. Retinoic acid, you may know as the brand name Retin-A. That will be the strongest form of retinoid. And so all of the other retinoids have to convert into retinoic acid to fit into these little receptors that we have in our skin cells. And then we have a whole separate bucket called provitamin A. So examples of this are carotenoids. Provitamin A, these are precursors that have to be converted by our body. This molecule is not vitamin A yet, and it can become vitamin A, but only if the body decides to convert it. And a lot of times you'll see like plant-based vitamin A products that fall into this second bucket, the provitamin A bucket. And so that's what I'll be talking about next week, along with other retinol alternatives. So for today, let's start with retinoids. And this is the type that our body doesn't need to do anything to turn it into vitamin A. It's already preformed. And you're going to see this on products anywhere from the drugstore to the dermatologist's office, but they're not all equal. So I want to explain the difference here. Think of it like a ladder. And at the bottom of the ladder, we have our gentlest form of retinoid called retinal esters. And you might see these on a label as like retinol palmitate, retinol acetate. And these are pretty stable. They're the least irritating and they're the slowest to act. They're also the least likely to cause negative side effects. These are like the slow and steady versions of retinoids. And so that sounds amazing, but I will say that a lot of brands that are using these aren't like the most elegant of skincare sometimes, but retinol esters are cheap and they are stable and they're pretty easy to formulate with, and they don't require any type of like encapsulation or more elegant formulations. Oftentimes I see them in like cheaper skincare products that are very filler heavy, maybe have like a silicone base, synthetic emulsifiers, petroleum derivatives, synthetic preservatives that disrupt the microbiome. So sadly, some of the good stuff about retinol esters, like not being inflammatory, well, now we've got potentially other really inflammatory ingredients alongside it. So I just say all of this to note, look at what you're buying. Just because it says vitamin A doesn't mean that it's like that holy grail that you are told about. It really matters the ecosystem that it's in. So next up the rung is retinol. She's the crowd favorite. She's the one everyone thinks that they need. It's the most common over-the-counter retinoid. Retinol is stronger than retinol esters. It's more active, which means that you do tend to see more visible changes with it. It definitely can smooth texture. It can help to fade uneven pigmentation. It can help with fine lines. But it also does come with a higher chance of irritation and like dryness and that classic flakiness. If you've ever used it, I'm sure you've experienced it. Let's go one more rung up that ladder to retinaldehyde, sometimes called retinol. This one is stronger and faster acting than retinol. So the changes that tend to happen are going to happen more quickly. And a lot of people do see smoother texture with this. And some people actually, I've noticed, have found it to be gentler than retinol, even though it technically is more potent, which is a very interesting paradox. But it still has the same potential for dryness and sensitivity and irritation. It is an active form of vitamin A, and it's still going to push our skin to work hard. At the top of the ladder, the vitamin A ladder, is retinoic acid. And this one you've probably heard called Retin-A. That's the brand name for tretinoin, which is a prescription strength form of vitamin A. And then I do just want to complete the picture here. Accutane is an oral acne medication. It's also a form of vitamin A, but I would put it in a totally different category because it works on the entire body, not just on the skin that you apply it to. So you can think of Accutane as like a systemic version of retinoic acid. I'm not going to go deep into Accutane today, but it is just helpful to know that it sits on the same vitamin A spectrum. It's just a really intense whole body form. So now that we've walked through each form of vitamin A from the gentlest all the way up to prescription strength, let's talk about the little journey that each form of vitamin A has to go through within our skin. The fewer steps it takes along this journey, the stronger and more potent it becomes. Each of these retinoids has to eventually become retinoic acid before your skin can actually use it. So retinoic acid is like the final form. It's the one that actually tells your skin to do things. So when topical retinoids are applied, there's little enzymes that convert them into this retinoic acid so that they fit perfectly into the lock, into the receptor that's only there for retinoic acid. So retinol esters have to convert into retinol, and then into retinaldehyde, and then finally into retinoic acid so that they can bind to the receptors, and then the cell behavior changes. Same with retinol. It has to convert into retinaldehyde and then into retinoic acid, and then it binds to the receptors. Retinaldehyde has to convert into retinoic acid, and then it can bind. Retinoic acid, that prescription strength, the Retin-A, actually doesn't have to convert at all. And so the more steps that there are, the slower and less potent it is. Retinol esters have the longest journey, the longest conversion, which is why they are the gentlest form. And again, the retinoic acid doesn't have to go really along that journey at all. It's already ready for the receptor. And I did talk about the paradox about how some people find retinaldehyde actually gentler than retinol, even though it is stronger. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that retinaldehyde is used at lower percentages in skincare formulation. So retinol is often sold at 0.25%, 0.5%, 1%. And marketing pushes those percentages because we're just in this whole story of stronger's better, right? Bigger percentage is better. But retinaldehyde is almost exclusively used at 0.05% or at 0.1%. So even though retinaldehyde is more active, the percentages are lower, which can result in fewer negative reactions on the skin. And then also retinaldehyde is more stable. Retinol is pretty unstable, and that means that it's going to oxidize more easily. And when anything oxidizes, it's going to create inflammation. And you might be like, oh, well, how does it oxidize? I have retinol. Pretty much anything is going to oxidize with light, oxygen, or heat. So if you are using retinol, it's very important that you're looking at your package. How is it packaged? Is it getting exposed to oxygen all the time? This is also a reminder that old expired retinol products are going to cause way more harm than good. So this is a reminder to do some fall clean out of skincare. We don't want to be applying expired products onto our skin because as things, especially, synthetic vitamins like retinoids, synthetic vitamin C, these can be unstable. And so we really want to make sure we're not applying expired skincare products onto our skin because of that oxidation. They might be actually causing inflammation, which can also be a big factor in collagen breakdown, all kinds of issues with what you could quote unquote call premature aging. Okay, so additionally, good retinaldehyde formulas tend to be much more sophisticated. And I promise I'm not a skincare snob, but I think I actually kind of am, but not in the way that you think. Like I would literally never buy quote unquote medical grade skincare. I would probably not buy anything from Neiman Marcus or Nordstrom. I'm very picky with my skincare, but I'm also a skincare minimalist. And so when we're seeing cheap skincare, especially cheap skincare with retinol in it, retinol's everywhere. It's at drugstores, Sephora, it's in cheap lotions, you name it, retinol's in it. So retinaldehyde is much more rare. It is more expensive. And so brands that use it are generally going to stabilize it better. They may be using better delivery systems. They may also be adding more antioxidants, soothing lipids. So we really want to be looking at the formula that these ingredients are in. And oftentimes, if a company is formulating with retinaldehyde, the whole formula that I've seen is going to be better. So that is retinoids and how they convert, how they actually interact with the skin. I think it's important to also note the contraindications for retinoid use, which is always pregnancy and breastfeeding. Also, if you have rosacea, sensitive skin, inflamed skin, a compromised barrier, chronic dryness, eczema, dermatitis, and then also medication-induced sensitivity or chronic inflammatory conditions. These are all indications that you don't want to use retinoids. And so now that you understand all of that, my hope is that you can walk into these ingredients with your eyes open. And that is your conventional look at retinoids. That's how I would have taught it before I understood corneotherapy and vitalism and before I was so interested in the body's natural intelligence. So let's put that in its box. And then let's get into the juice. And I want to put my own flair on this conversation. If you're new here, I practice a philosophy called corneotherapy. Corneotherapy is the preservation of the integrity of your skin, specifically the surface layer. It's called your stratum corneum. And don't let your eyes glaze over, because if you want your skin to look good, to feel good, to be healthy, this is so important. And this top layer of skin cells is also going to include your skin's microbiome and the lipid barrier. You've probably seen all kinds of products being marketed now as like barrier protective or whatever. That's the barrier we're talking about here. And this philosophy, corneotherapy, is different than conventional skincare because conventional skincare just thinks that the surface of the skin is dead. That's what I was always taught in aesthetics school. Even as an instructor, I worked as an instructor for estheticians for a long time. And I taught that because that's what I was taught. Well, guess what? Not accurate. It's a living, intelligent, essential part of our skin, which is like, well, duh, why would we have this like dead layer on top that doesn't do anything? Our body doesn't work like that. And then also in conventional skincare, they're not thinking about the skin's microbiome at all. And this is a big deal that these two things are ignored because it's keeping people from having healthy skin because they're using products that are just totally ignoring the most important things about the skin. So from this perspective, the problem with forcing the skin to speed up its skin cell turnover, that process that makes the cells slough off faster, we're thinning the surface layer of the skin. And then also that process called differentiation that I talked about earlier, that's that new cell training. So that takes time. And so we're getting cells falling off the surface more quickly. And then it's also taking a while for new cells to get fully trained. And so we're rushing it and fewer cells are making it all the way up to the surface. And the ones that do aren't fully matured. Those dead skin cells that everyone's just so desperate to exfoliate off weren't useless at all. In nature, nothing is wasted. Those corneocytes were meant to guide and inform younger cells, teaching them what the outside world is like and strengthening the barrier. Yet we're buying all these products that are barrier supportive when we actually have barrier strengthening components already on the skin that we're just like, let's get rid of them. So when this turnover is pushed too fast, these new cells are arriving at the surface unprepared. And this is what happens when we see redness and inflammation and a problem healing on our skin. That's problematic. But then also, your skin isn't just your skin. We've got this entire living community on the surface of our skin. Trillions, yes, trillions of microbes live on the surface and they're communicating. They're literally working to keep you safe and healthy every second of the day. They help train the immune system. They help with protection from too much UV exposure from the sun. They control inflammation. They decide what pathogens get shut down. They influence how reactive or calm your skin is. And so when we're thinning the barrier or pushing turnover too fast, we're disrupting these ecosystems. It's like clear cutting a forest. Everything's becoming vulnerable. When we thin that top layer, we're removing microbial homes, we're reducing their food, we're exposing them to more oxygen than they're meant to live in. We're creating a very unstable community, and that's because these microbes adapt really slowly and things are changing on the skin in an unnatural way that they can't always adapt to. So retinoids do give fast results, but they also weaken the structure that protects and nourishes the skin. And what's so bananas to me is that the dermatologist who's most often credited with bringing Retin-A into dermatology, his name's Dr. Albert Klingman, he worked on a team to develop the formulation of topical tretinoins in the 60s. And then like 30-ish years later, his understanding of the skin had deepened and he realized that the barrier protection is where it's at. And he's the one who came up with the term corneotherapy and published the foundational papers on it. So he had just totally shifted his paradigm through time and realized that the surface of the skin is not actually dead and it's super important. And you may be wondering like, well, why is that not like how all of dermatology is then? And, you know, the biomedical approach is to treat the body like it's a machine because that's the paradigm it was built in. It's this quick fix, single target, measurable outcome moment. And you totally see that showing up in skincare as well, especially when we're talking about ingredients like retinoids. They are very much that machine model ingredient. And when I say that, I mean because this type of ingredient is speaking to just one pathway. We've got the retinoic acid receptors that affect cell differentiation and faster turnover. And so we're hitting one lever in the skin and we're cranking it over and over and over again for years sometimes. But like I've said, our skin is an ecosystem. Everything is affecting everything. The top layer of your skin is active. It's teaching those younger cells. It's always sending signals to the deeper layers to help regulate hydration and oil production and inflammation. And so when we're overstimulating cell turnover, it's going to throw off that balance. Our system's being pushed really hard. And I just feel like there's so much science coming out that is showing that our cells are so much more responsive to all of the subtle signals than we ever understood before. And I just imagine that our cells notice when we're forcing things and shutting down their natural wisdom. It's kind of poetic if you think about it. Like when we ignore our hunger cues or push through exhaustion and don't allow ourselves to rest, we know what happens. We know what happens when we override the body in those ways. Never ends well, does it? And so I don't know. I've just been thinking, like, why would it be any different on a cellular level? I don't know. All right. I'm so glad we got into this. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, sign up for my weekly newsletter, Moonday Notes. I will be back next week when we talk all about all of the natural alternatives to retinol, if they are what they seem to be, and all of that. So until then, be well. You've been listening to Skin, Earth, Vitality. If you like what you heard today, consider giving me a 5-star rating. It helps other people just like you to find the show. You can shop products and find all of my offerings on my website, stratumaesthetics.com, and follow me on my social channels @stratumaesthetics.